And on that time, I started to have IBS, I started to have gastric reflux, I started to have anxiety, I had my first anxiety, my panic attack. So that was my 90s, like 1920th. I've been spending 10 years trying to figure out fibromyalgia from a physical point of view, which I always thought I'll learn myself, or I'll just, like, my body is broken, it's default, and these things keep happening. Incidentally, it was really hard to let go of the fact that for 10 years I was wrong, and all my health issues were coming from a nerve system dysregulation, or that has been kept in survival all this time. I found out about this when I had a burnout. And so I was struggling with a huge flare up of fibromyalgia. I was struggling with anxiety, and I was depressed on that time. Incidentally, I need to look for another hype. It's like this is a drug. This is an addiction that you end up creating.
Sarah, what would you tell your 20-year-old self about the mind-body connection?
I think I would tell her, because when you say that, I think about me when I was in uni. And on that time, I started to have IBS, I started to have gastric reflux, I started to have anxiety, I had my first anxiety, my panic attack. So that was my 90s, like 1920th. And I would tell her that she doesn't need to force to be loved. That I was able to be myself was enough to be loved, and that I didn't need to put so much pressure in myself to perform all the time. Because those were two key things that led as adults, but on that time, for my mind and body symptoms. And then, because she was studying biomedical science, I would tell her to step away from the anatomy and the biology that she has learned in that way. And I would ask her to be more curious about the psychology, let's say, of things, and how the psychology was linked with the body. Yeah, and that could lead for me to tell you a long story about my main resistance when I found out about mind and body connection, which was that sense of, man, I've studied science. I've been spending 10 years trying to figure out fibromyalgia from a physical point of view, which I always thought I'll learn myself, or I'll just, like, my body is broken, it's default, and these things keep happening. Incidentally, it was really hard to let go of the fact that for 10 years I was wrong, and all my health issues were coming from a nerve system dysregulation, or that has been kept in survival all this time.
I think that we will talk about like this shift later on, but it's funny that you said that you walked from, or said that you would tell her to go from this anatomy to more towards the psychology, because I'm right now at uni and into neuroscience, and I'm also studying the anatomy but from the brain. So yeah, maybe I should do the switch early on.
Yeah.
But thankfully I have a podcast like this where I can talk about a lot of psychology and things that interest me with experts. But pressure to be loved is something that like sticked out, because this topic of being loved, I think, has a lot of layers.
Yeah.
And I think we both heard a quote that I think Wolfgang told us in the session, which was those who are not loved want to be respected, who can't be respected want to be heard, and this goes on and on and on. But I really want to talk about why you felt the pressure to be loved in the first place.
So I found out in mind and body medicine, which is now seen as a medicine, as 20 years. I found out about this when I had a burnout. And so I was struggling with a huge flare up of fibromyalgia. I was struggling with anxiety, and I was depressed on that time. I didn't even recognize that. It took me a long time. So approaching the neuroscience and the neuroplasticity of symptoms was kind of the first stage in my recovery. And then it led to this understanding that my personality, it was the key, the big driver of hypervigilant and chronic stress through all my life. And here it comes that pressure, that responsibility. So, and when I say that, I think about the perfectionism. So I'm 38, so I spent nearly 40 years trying to be perfect at everything that I did. And in particular, as a young adult, like from my late teens, I started to put a lot of pressure on myself because it was this constant need of I need to have everything figured out. I need to perform well. I need to achieve, because that was giving me a fake sense of validation and love. So a perfectionist and high achiever, it was the personality traits that I've developed to protect myself. Mm-hmm. And this might come in different ways. Some people might be like people pleasing, catastrophizing, like self-critics, like things like this. Those are my key drivers for nervous system regulation and illness. And the thing about perfectionists is it's slightly different for many people, but it also comes that sense of if you're perfect, if everything that you do is amazing, there is no other way that people is not going to love you, is not going to like you. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to feel seen. That part that is saying about Wolfgang, like this part of being seen. So the thing this is like a fake sense of protection, because I achieved so much in my professional life through many years, like moving country, working many years in a hospital, progressing constantly. But that was my drive, but that was never enough. Mm-hmm. Achieving a better job or creating something never gave me, it was like, oh, I got this. It's almost like it's this fake sense of I'm good enough now and I feel okay for a micro moment. Incidentally, I need to look for another hype. It's like this is a drug. This is an addiction that you end up creating. But the reality is, deep inside, where you're trying to get these external things in your life, which puts a lot of pressure because no one is perfect. Perfection is a perception. But I was trying to put all this pressure on myself because you, as a perfectionist, you think you can do better than anyone else. Mm-hmm. Also because you don't trust other people to do things for you. And that's just one example. But if you do it and if you work hard, you're always going to make it. But this doesn't lead you to break, doesn't lead you to, you might feel stressed with a deadline or something you're creating, but then that happens and you don't have time to come back into baseline or nervous system. You're constantly in this hypervigilant state, this go, this pressure, this constant pressure that you create to yourself. Mm-hmm. The reality is I never end up, and that never gave me the real sense of feeling loved, the sense of feeling enough, which many times feeling enough and feeling loved many times come hand in hand. So this was the key thing, but these were just behaviors that I've developed to protect myself from what was the real root cause behind this. And this is what I do a lot with the people that I work with. We uncover the root causes that are leading to the nervous system's regulation, which end up becoming a chronic state of stress or overwhelm. Mm-hmm. Even if you look that you're not stressed, that's the thing. It is happening inside of you. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to understand that those were protective mechanisms that I've developed to give me a fake sense of being loved and validated. The thing is, there's always going to be a time that someone's going to say that something that you're doing is wrong. And you're going to feel like shit deep inside. You're going to feel like there is a real threat. There is a tiger in front of you. Your life ends up depending on those things. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So all of that to get the sense of safety, because that is what love it is. When we feel loved by others, we feel safe. And not having that, I was feeling in constant threat. So then I got the other things to try to make myself feel safe, but those things were creating an addiction and a behavior that I was just getting more stressed. Mm-hmm. So the work ended up being understanding why I was not feeling like I love my parents, they love me. They did the best they could, but the reality is they were never emotionally available to allow me to feel loved and seen and validated. I was like top at school and everything, and they didn't even was worry or ask me or tell it, well done. Like you had top score in school. And these things as a child is what we call unmet needs. Many times it leads to create imprints in your nervous system that you need to seek for something that you didn't get as a young. And you keep developing these patterns to your life as an adult life. So it was about understanding where was that trauma, which is not the event. It is what is the imprint that was left in your nervous system. And was about being able to parent myself and start to love myself and feel enough. So I didn't need to use those protective mechanisms and be constantly in a chronic stress and overwhelm. Does it make sense? So it feels like it's a long answer, but
Yes, it was definitely long, but yeah, I think you mentioned the next talking point, which will be more about understanding the root cause. But before that, I still have like a few more quick questions. You mentioned protective mechanisms.
Yeah.
You mentioned perfectionism, but you also mentioned a few other things that went in the same direction, like a lot of self-critique. This could be like one of the things.
That is no like that is different for everybody. But the reality is we all end up develop different mechanisms, which many times lead to this mind and body connection or this nerve system's regulation from mind and body lenses. It is different for many people. These were the key drivers in to be, along with repressed emotions, along with a narcissist relationship that I had that definitely kind of destroyed all my, what was left about self-love, kind of destroyed that somehow. So I usually give this analogy. There is this bottle, and sorry, my bottle falls a lot, so she doesn't look great. So there is the acute childhood event, which is ACEs. So this is thing that happen when you're child till like you're 5, 7 years old, which leaves the imprint in your nervous system because we depend purely in our caregivers, in our parents, or in our external environment to feel safe and to develop the sense of safety and regulation in our nervous system. But many of us, our parents, they also have their own needs that is not available. Sometimes there are abuse and other things that can lead to this nerve system to become more activated, right? And then these things can lead to developing of personality traits, those coping mechanisms that I was saying. And that could be perfectionism, high achiever, that could be catastrophizing, so like always trying to predict the worst so then you can control your environment to feel safer. But here you are, you constantly seeking out for safety, not in a real way, in an external way. The self-criticism fits into that as well. So many times we criticize ourselves to make sure we do better, for example, so then there is no external threat towards you. So if we do better, like this says, okay, I'm going to criticize myself, so then so it's almost that you need to push yourself, so then something bad might not happen. And in terms of, there is another big one, which is people pleasing. When I say big one, like this kind of piles up, which is a nervous system behavior that we develop to make the external world well, like pleasing others, making sure everything in your surrounding it is okay, so then there is nothing bad coming towards you. So you just avoid that something bad towards you comes, and this is a way to feel safe as well. But when we do this many times, we don't attain to our own needs, and we just attain it to others. And then things like being a caregiver, bad relationship, finances, grief, things just keep piling up. In the midst of this, your body might start to give you signals that, like pain when you stress for too long or tired, but you just keep going through. You don't see, or you just see like labels like medicine, or this is just anxiety, like it is an issue. It's like there's something that you get. It's not something that you get. It's just a nerve system that I feel is in constant sense of fear and needs safety. So, and then there's a cherry on top of the cake. My cherry on top of the cake was definitely moving to the UK, speaking a language I could barely speak. Yeah, it was, everything was a threat on that time. New job, not being able, like new job, I could barely speak the language, doing something I never done, understanding my own environment safety. Like I'm in a different country, like I only have one friend. I don't know these people. I don't know how to communicate. I need people to like me to feel safe inside of me, and I cannot get that. So it was a lot that happened for me. And then, yeah, things like having, which I started to have like a lot of mind and body symptoms back then on that period. And then before I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I was working night shifts. I was working face to face with patients, and emergency bell would go off. and was constant pressure on myself to be perfect all the time, all the time. And so all of that just added up until your nerve system becomes oversensitive, which does not when I say oversensitive, doesn't mean that you're a sensitive person. It becomes overactive to what becomes a perceived threat. And incidentally, you're just scanning out for threats, which they're not real threats, they're fake smoke alarms. And then it leads for you to start having issues. And then doctors tell you you need to live with this. And there's nothing to do. And this just adds more stress into it. And then the fear of having a flare up, the fear of doing something that will make your symptoms worse, this just keeps adding up. And this is what many people end up developing mind and body symptoms. So there is no right formula to burnout. There is no right formula to develop mind and body symptoms. But there is a pattern, and all the people I've worked with, they've self-critics. They have a lot of responsibility on themselves. As a perfectionist, they take on more than they can handle, and that many times leads to burnout. But before I burned out, I was doing four courses at the same time, working a full-time job and trying to put pressure on myself to be the best yoga teacher on that time. So it was all me creating my own fake smoke alarm systems. But it is not a right formula. It is things that build up and is different for many people. And many times these behaviors, as I was saying, those are many times behaviors develop as protective mechanisms from trauma and unmet needs at some point in our lives.
Like, as you said, the bottle example, I was thinking a lot about, like, when I was young, and there was always this one thing that I still notice for myself, that a lot of people in my life lied to me. Like, first these were like small little lies to get me to do certain things. And slowly but surely I like exposed them and said, hey, you can't lie to me. But these people kept on and on and on, and these were people in my like closest circle, say. So yeah, I still notice this today from time to time. They still do that from time to time, the same exact people. But yeah, I think that this is definitely one of the small things that build a lot of stress inside of me, that I can't really trust even the people who are closest around me.
That is a beautiful example. What you're saying is what we usually call is a conditional behavior. So your brain makes sense of everything that is happening around you, because it's like we're walking through life and the brain only has is moving through life with one question: am I safe? This is it. And I'm not going to judge or interpret what was behind the feelings of having constant people lying to you. But as this keeps happening, your brain starts to picking up on this. Then we develop whatever narrative we're going to develop to make ourselves feel safe about it. Because if having someone lying to you feels unsafe, let's just create something that makes us feel safe in the midst of this threat. And not trusting others, it is a behavior that we develop to feel safe about that threat that is coming towards you. So, and those are mechanisms that are needed. We need those things. Like, the problem is when this becomes not chronic or just takes over a lot of our lives, because the reality it is that the imprint might be a different one. So instead of not wanting or not trusting people to make ourselves feel safe, is understanding, is this a real threat? Because will be people that will be talking with you, they're not lying. And those people you can trust. But we better keep ourselves safe and not trust people. So that is just an example of things that we developed as a behavior to feel safe. The problem is these things are mechanisms for a short sense of safety in a moment. One, like, I'll give my own example. So all the time I did something that no one told me, oh, you've done good or well done. I was still living inside of me that sense of danger, of threat, of no, I felt loved and validated by my parents. So the triggers that are showing up in your life now are about the traumas many times. The trauma is not a bad thing. And many times we get really caught into the story of the traumas, and that's why the nerve system and somatic work is so powerful. because the brain sends 20% message of safety to your body, and the body sends 80% of the way up. And we try to control everything through our minds, right? We'd rather just figure out this through our minds, which is our conscious body, and then the body is the nervous system, is the subconscious. So many times it is about feeling the hurt of whatever trauma might have happened, so then we can start to bring safety to us. This happens, this will be a very long conversation because that there's a lot of trauma, but many times it is, well, we need more. Like me, I didn't need to prove myself more and being told that I was good enough. I needed to process the trauma that was left inside of me at the same time as I rebuilt. Usually it's three things, like it's context, the kindness, and the choice. The choice is a rewiring. And the rewiring, it is the safety you want to bring into yourself. Because we, like you say, like you rather not trust someone, but this is from an old story. So we might be able to acknowledge the story, this is happening now, not wanting to trust someone. It is from that context, that trauma, not going into the story of it, and just bring kindness and compassion. Like, it was bad. I'm going to say the shit word, like it was shit to have people to lie to me, and that might have caused pain and hurt, and you don't want people to treat you that way. So, and then is the rewiring, which is the choice, and how from this we can slowly start to bring safety. And the way I work mostly is using the body many times to bring that safety. And many times is behavioral change, is mindset change, but it's starting to bring safety. So then the body and the brain relearns that connection with people doesn't mean someone's going to lie to you. Makes sense. But yeah, but trauma is a long, big topic just itself. But it's all about learning safety, because those mechanisms that we have created many times is going to lead for a bottle to fill in a way or form.
Yeah, thank you, first of all. And now I was curious about, now these things are in my body now, as it is. And you mentioned that the root cause can, or like understanding it in the first place, most of the times happens when someone went through the experience of having something like a panic attack or burnout, so that they first feel the immense amount of pain before like being conscious about it and trying to figure out what the root cause is. You also mentioned that I can be in a stressful state even though like I'm not showing it to anybody. So before we will go to the root cause, one last question is, how can someone who is in this constant state of stress but not really experience anything like a panic attack or burnout can really understand that there's a lack of safety that he's feeling or she's feeling?
Yeah, I love that question because, well, I teach a course just on this, which is a 4-week somatic regulation course. So I'm going to go through the nervous system very quickly on this in a nutshell as best as I can. So we have these states of the nervous system. So the ventral state is when we're safe, when we're social connection, like me and you, we're both safe, we're having conversation, when you're with your friends on a pub or anything like that. But we feel connected, I don't want to even use the word calm, but grounded and safe. So this is where we want to go all the time. That is a stressor, because nothing bad with stress. The nervous system developed this capacity to survive, to regulate. So something might happen, then brings you to stress. Like you're not going to the full bottle yet, but how can you start to notice there are this constant pressure and stress in your nervous system that you might not be even noticing? So what happens is when we go through stress, and this could be an emotion of anger, this could be emotion like sadness, fear that we repress or we feel, that creates a sympathetic activation. So this is not something woo-woo. This is a real cascade that happens inside of your body. So your brain signals that is a threat. And when I say a threat, it could be you been talking with someone that you might think he's lying to you, right? Or me doing something that back in the days, someone would think bad about me and they wouldn't like me. So this creates a cascade, which is sympathetic activation, which is our most known fight or flight response. So your body creates this it kicks in with, this is a threat, let's go and work on this. So we send adrenaline and cortisol, and the heartbeat go fast, the blood flow goes to the peripheries of our body, we tense and we might even sweat. We tension up, so then we can do two things. We can either fight the threat or we can run away. This happens in your body. So a simple way that we can start to notice that we're going through chronic stress or chronic overwhelm, or even trauma has been piling up and this continue to happen, that sympathetic activation has been completed back to safety, is when we start to notice that we become less able to focus, for example, because your brain on that moment is not a rational brain, is a survival brain. So focusing in a task is going to be really, really difficult. You feel alert. It's like you have this rush of adrenaline. You might feel agitated because this is piling up, this energy. You might start to feel tense. You might notice that your heartbeat is constantly on a high state. But you also might notice other things. After a day, a normal day, you just go into a crash because you're not meant to be in this high or sympathetic response for too long. We're meant to be there for a while and then come back to safety. We're meant to feel an emotion of anger or sadness for 90 seconds and then go back. This is how it should be if we don't get caught in the stories or the trauma, the context I was saying. Many times what happens, we don't go back to safety because there is no time, because there is no resources in our life, there is no one to support us because the demand, external demand is too big. And then many times what happens, we crash. We go into a state that is a shutdown state. So we have a parasympathetic nervous system, which is the ventral and the dorsal. The dorsal, we might move into a state of freeze before that, which is, feels like you have a foot on an accelerator and a brake at the same time. Have you ever felt like that? Like you stress, but at the same time you want to collapse, but you keep going. You start to notice those things, and then you start to notice that you might crash. You will have periods that you go into long periods of procrastination, things like depression or fatigue, because we need to. It's like going to binge watching at the end of the day, so your body can just take a moment to recalibrate, but in a chronic state. So in the midst of this, when this continues to pile, you might start to notice that your sleep is more interrupted, you don't sleep as well. There are certain things, because if you have tigers around you, how can you fall asleep? You need to survive. So these are simple things that you might start to notice in your body. Things, very simple things like being way too much thirsty than usual was a symptom that I had. Inside of you, when you're in chronic stress or that trauma overwhelm, you're constantly creating energies in the mitochondria. You're constantly creating that to fight the threats. But then in the long run, then your body doesn't have time to feel the resources after being used, and many times it leads to other health issues and things like cardiac issues, diabetes, things, all of those things that we know that stress, it is bad for. So what I would tell people, it is start to have moments in your life when you can have a check-in and notice if you are in a fight-flight response. That tensioning, that heartbeat, maybe sweat, tension in the head, that sense of urgency in our bodies. It is there if we pay attention.
I noticed this a few times for myself. Let's say I notice a few of these cues. And now I come to you to find out what I can do in order to, change that. So what would you say is a way to even understand the root cause of all of this? Because you mentioned that there are definitely a few of them, but how does the process of finding the context of all of this even?
Yeah. So this is more than just being stressed. It is then becomes being in a survival state that we only notice when we crash with illness or something like that, like of the burnout or something like that. So when I I give many times people, this is not something I came up with. So there is loads of specialists in this field, is a mind and body medicine. There are amazing specialists out there, which I've learned and then I developed more learning in trauma and the biology of trauma and the somatic nervous system part. So, which all comes together. So I usually have like a set questions, a specific set of questions to people. And it's so simple to see the connections, because usually symptoms, they develop after, like they'll say, the cherry on the top of the cake. Before I start to work with anyone, we always need to rule out serious illness. And this could be something like a tumor, an infection, something like that. What happened many times, people have tried many different specialties like I did, and nothing has really helped. Or they try different treatments and then they help for a bit, but they don't really solve the issue because we're addressing the issue, not the root cause. That makes sense. So many times when I start to work with someone, I always ask someone, do a roadmap of your life and all the symptoms that have crept in. And this could be headaches, this could be fatigue, this could be IBS, back pain, gastric issues, I don't know, a diagnosis you might have had that you've been told that you need to manage for life, increased inflammation, and then things like chronic fatigue, long COVID, fibromyalgia, dizziness. It's such a long list that we know most of these symptoms, 88% is what our research shows, they are mind and body. They're not real structural issues. Like I was telling my life, when I was in uni, it was such a high pressure on myself and my words and doing well. And so that it was a period. And I started to have developed anxiety there, IBS, gastric reflux. So what I ask people is, do a roadmap of symptoms that you might have had through your life, and then link them. What was going on in your life that was high pressure, that was a stressor, that was an emotional difficulty? Look at, and there is no one person that this doesn't connect. Many times, yes, it's the pile up, but many times it's the flare ups. So this is a way to start to see the regular issues. So I give a lot of specific books for people to reflect on and tools. But when we start to understand that what part it is neuroplasticity, avoiding doing certain things to protect yourself from that pain, which we might know is mind embodied, what happens is just reinforcing the neural pathways of that pain. And so you will have pain all the time. Your nervous system or your brain finds a threat. So sometimes that is a root cause, what is leading to. Many times it is emotions. People end up not being able to feel emotions, safety, and your brain and nervous system doesn't, when you feel an emotion, it goes into this fire, like smoke alarm. It is a threat. It is a perceived threat. And many times it's trauma that's been piling up, which is very easy to understand with a set of questions. There are many things that are key things, trends, and the personality are trends to many people. And that's what I love the most about working with people, is because when working with someone, as you get to know and you start to see the issues that are coming up in their life, you start to see that it's like you're a detective of the fake smoke alarms in our life. Like you start to see where danger is being perceived in our life. Many times it's not the issue. It's like there's not a relationship many times that is a problem. It is our sense of safety that is a problem. And we're seeing that threat when it's not a threat. So it is a exploration, and it is not a quick thing. And that's why I don't work with people just in a one-off session. And for me, it took me 2 years. And I think I'll forever be finding fake smoke alarms in my life. Like it is always room for safety. But usually it is this common patterns, as I was saying.
It's actually funny how, when you said the shoulder example, I got reminded of whenever I'm praying on my knees and then I have to like bend my knee. And every time I do that, my knees just hurt so much. And I started having this pain for almost 10 years. So ever since I had my car accident. So ever since that, I always, whenever I was praying on my knees, I had this pain. And so it's just like when I bend it, it's like hurts a lot. So I always have to relieve the pain by like standing up a little bit. And this is still present till this day. But my knee is like perfectly fine. I will run a half marathon in 3 days. So
Definitely not a physical, definitely not a structural damage there.
yes, so this would like bring me to a quick question about how I can even, or what are some questions or practices I can do in order to identify if it's a structural or a neuroscience driven like damage.
So
Because you mentioned that 88% of it is oftentimes from the mind body.
So I usually ask people to work in something that is called an evidence list. So like think that we have ruled out bad things, let's call it, right? And you mentioned you ran a marathon, and have you checked, like have you done any, I don't know, MRI, or I don't know, have you been checked by a doctor or a specialist to check that is nothing, that is no structural damage in your knee that would be causing that pain?
So the doctor basically said that my knee is fine. So basically my whole leg is fine. But after having this pain for like the last 10 years, I never really went to the doctor. Instead, I was just like training like everything is normal, and my leg is my strongest muscle. So I don't really know if I should go and check it or assume that it's fine and maybe think that it's something in my nervous system.
Yeah. So there is this thing. That's why it's so important to rule out things. I'll tell you, I had knee pain was one of the million, not million bad, like over 20 different things through my life. A knee pain, it was one of them. And for like 2 years, I had chronic knee pain. I had knee pain all the time. And then it would go away. I'll go. So I had physios telling that was the tendon that was inflamed. The doctors would say, maybe you have pain because you have hypermobility and your knee, the tendon, the patellar tendon, it just overloads, like all of those things, which I was going to say, all of this crap. It's not all of this crap, but so they were finding something that would make sense for it, right? But one thing that was reinforcing it, it was me constantly doing things to make it feel better. So you have to think, it's easier to explain the neuroplasticity with imagine you hurt yourself, right? You break a leg. When you break a leg, there is a motor way that is created from your brain till that part of the body. You broke your leg, there's definitely a structural issue there, and then your brain sends this fire alarm, so something is bad there, it hurts. So then we can actually rest and then things go back to this motorway, which is we call neuropathway. There's a neuropathway of pain that is created. When this is created, and it is known, so all the time something that put the fire alarm going again, this alert mechanism, they're going to go to where is a motorway. So they're not going to go. So the brain fire is we usually say neurons that wire together fire together. So this neural pathway that's been created, it is known. But then there is other things that create in our brain, which is the conditioning. And I'm saying this is your case, but I'm going to tell you an example that this was my case. Before I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I had back pain and hip pain all the time. And in my mind, because this would always happen after walking for long periods of time, I would have a really bad back after that time. This was so ingrained over years that walking for a long time, it was what was causing hip pain. And then reinforced by saying, yes, you have hypermobility, so your muscles work harder, so then you're going to have pain. So other things I've been told. This was the last symptom that I end up unlearning because it was so ingrained, and and then your brain associates an activity with something that it needs to protect you. So you walking like he knows this causes pain, even if it's mind and body pain. So he's going to continue to tell you to not do this because it's painful. It's a threat still. So all the time, even before I would go to a festival, like a week before, even if I was not having back pain and hip pain, I'll start to have it, or I'll get there and I'll start to have really bad hip pain and back pain. Because your brain starts to fire those neurons, those danger signals, because it's seeing a threat and it wants to keep you survive at all times. So if he has interpreted that this thing has caused you pain, if your brain has reinforced that if you kneel, you bend your knees that way, that you're going to have pain, he also going to tell you that you have pain all the time you do it. But then there is this evidence-less. A real structural damage, it wouldn't behave this way. You wouldn't be able to run a marathon, but not kneeling. So evidence-less, it is this thing like when you end up like me, when I would be traveling, I would walk like hours and hours and hours, but I was so relaxed and living my best life. There was no threats. My nervous system was so safe. I would walk and he wouldn't send me the fake smoke alarms. This type of thing, like I had really bad stomach for a year. And then I went to Malaysia and I was eating all the most amazing street food and I didn't have any gastric issues. None. The day I flew back, I started to have problems. So it's certain things, what you call evidence, that starts to make sense that, oh, this probably is mind and body. And so it is retraining our brain, and this is the neuroplasticity part. It's called Neuroplasticity 101, is retraining our brain that activity is safe, that is nothing bad with that. But also working in what might be filling the bottle, which might be causing fake. Because sometimes it's a mix of both of them. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, definitely.
Off podcast will be really interesting to talk more about your knee.
Yeah, I think that now we understood how to find the context even. How are the next steps? I think that it can be individual for certain types of mind-body, I don't want to call it issues, but
symptoms.
But yeah, I think earlier on you said that we could introduce some somatic practices in order to give our body the sense of safety.
So there are key things that are important. And then I'll give a more practical. So one, understanding and trusting. Like where there is, as we were talking, where there is this hesitance, is this really something structural or is this mind and body? Where there is this unknown, this doubt, where there is doubt, that is hypervigilance. There is a sense of fear that's been created in your brain that's moving into your body. So when there is doubt, there is fear. So that's why when I start to work with someone, understanding what mind and body is and how it plays up, and understanding how trauma and emotional regulation plays a big role in this, it is essential. Because if you still trying to work on yourself on a mind and body perspective, but you're still trying to fix your body, going to another doctor, specialist, finding another, this is just creating this sense of doubt, this sense of fear, this sense of uncertainty about something. So that's why trust and understanding is so important in this, which it will keep building as you start to see the evidence, as you start to do the work, you start then to reinforce these things. But it needs to be at the beginning, this understanding of it. And there is now amazing books and podcasts of specialists and coaches and practitioners like me. So that is important because that already is dialing down that fake smoke alarm. And then the other thing is curiosity. And when I say curiosity, is when there is curiosity, there is no fear. You cannot be fearful and curious at the same time. So think about fear being the fire alarm. Curiosity, it is the water dialing down the smoke. I don't know if that makes sense. So when you're curious, when you start to be curious towards the physical sensation, let's put this into pain, specific pain. This could be other things like fatigue or other symptoms, right? Or anxiety. When you start to notice the parts of your body that you have pain, but you start to be curious about it instead of fearful about it, you start to create a different neural pathway about that same physical sensation. And over time, this weakens the neural pathway, the motorway that's been created, the motorway of pain, and you start to create a new neural pathway. And many times this is enough for many people to start having pain in a specific place when it's very heavy neuroplastic. Again, if there are other things that are in the bottle that is still causing those perceived threats, we're still gonna still firing those sense of danger signals. But curiosity, like when I was when I had the burnout, I had really bad shoulder pain. I was teaching yoga, and I was fearful of teaching yoga because I thought by just teaching and doing physical movement, I was going to hurt myself even more. So then this loop was just creating more threat and more pain. And I was so stuck in this vicious cycle. So then when I start to understand mind and body, I'll start to fear the pain less. And when I start to approach the pain with curiosity, with friendliness, not something to fix, I continue to dial down the threat. So this is a very, that awareness with curiosity about symptoms, it is something that we can all do. And we all have come across anxiety at some point in our life. And many times we get caught into the physical sensation that something bad is happening in our body. So starting to see those physical sensations with curiosity, and maybe even asking, what is in my body trying to tell me? What is my body trying to protect me from? Are simple things that we can just weave this mind and body knowledge, because even if there is a physical if there is a physical broken leg, let's say, if you're stressed, if there's something really bad going on in your life, you're going to have more pain just because of that. It's because that's going to create more inflammation in your body. That's going to demand so much more in your biology as well. So it is this mind, body, and biology kind of complex but amazing thing. This. It is easier to smile now when I was not smiling when I was in the midst of the tough ball of chaos. But dialing down the fear with curiosity and understanding of the body, and so trying to fix this is an essential skill that we need to develop.
Yeah, I think that we covered a lot around the mind and body, and I think that if we had the time, we could talk about this for hours.
I could talk about this all day.
But in this three-way split you mentioned, context, kindness, and choice, we covered the context a lot now, but I still don't want the other two to be missing. Can we maybe go a little bit more into the other 2 points? Or maybe the whole mind body practice as a whole. So we have now the context, we have a bit of practices. How does this process of healing looks like, or is there something that is still missing in this whole process of healing that we haven't mentioned yet?
There are, so the context and kindness and choice, it is a particularly key thing about trauma, which can be so much broadened. But if we think about the key elements of mind and body healing, right, as you're saying, one is that I was saying is understanding and trust. It is essential. You need to understand this. And that's why I've created a resource, which I did send you, which kind of makes a bit more sense, not without having to read a book, why the brain becomes so sensitive, or sometimes I don't like to use the word sensitive, becomes more overactive to threat or perceived threat. So understanding it is key, and trust. So understanding this, because we all have developed understanding about where something there's something wrong back with you. If you have stomach pain, it's something bad in your stomach. So we all have developed this so strongly through mind and body. And this is me saying this from someone that studied biomedical science, something that still works in a hospital. We're so caught into that, which there is a space for that, definitely. But in terms of mind and chronic symptoms, we know much more than that. So we need to understand this. And the other part is what I was saying is starting to see where are the threats, what are the root causes that have led to this nerve system's dysregulation, what have led to the brain and nerve system to become oversensitive to a threat. And this will include working in our emotional regulation, which might include working in trauma. And trauma is not the event that happened to you, but what didn't happen in your nervous system after an event. So it's the imprint of the nervous system to not feel safe after a difficult event. Not difficult, a stressful event, let's call it. So that, for me, the most powerful tools are body-based practices. So head down, yes, but mostly bottom up practices. Using the context to allow the body to discharge and feel safe on its own. Is rewiring these safeties, restructuring safety where we've become so stuck in survival through emotions and trauma. And then it comes the biology part, which also play a role, because these things that happen, chronic stress and trauma, they have an imprint in our body. So this might deplete. People might become more prone to illness. They might have gut issues and things like that. So this all plays a role and sometimes needs support. But that is not the root cause. And then is understanding our brain and what behaviors we are constantly having in our lives that are still creating a sense of danger. And this comes in many different ways. So it might be the neural pathways, as we were talking, like the motor way. It could be you having a life that is no time to bounce back to safety. It might be that you study and have 2 jobs and you still need to look after your mom, or you have financial pressures, and that it is not capacity in your life to want. Sometimes it's asking for support and co-regulation. But the way I start to work with people nowadays in the midst of this is building capacity, building resourcing, because in the midst of all of this, all this bottle, we end up losing the capacity to feel safe again. And if we don't get ourselves some sense of capacity and resourcing in that way, when we approach the difficult things that we might have avoided all life to find safety and regulation, we just might move into a hijack of this is too much, because you're going to have to lean towards what your brain and your nervous system have been perceiving as a threat to be able to regulate it to safety. We need to lean into discomfort to teach our brain and nervous system that this discomfort, it is safe. Mm-hmm. So then we can bounce back to safety, and maybe that's all it is for now. So that is baby steps of safety to restore all of it. And many times it might be working in your mindset and your beliefs, but this all links to trauma, because the trauma many times is what ends up leading to our emotions, our beliefs, and our thoughts. There's this kind of mix of mind, restructuring of safety, and we mentioned curiosity. The emotional part might be start to talk about your feeling. Don't avoid feeling sad. Sadness is a natural emotion like joy and happiness. If you feel anger, allow that anger. Allow it to move through you. I'm not saying don't punch the person, but allow that to come through you. Allow that. Just allow that burst of things that happen in your body, and then it will come out. The more we feel our emotions, not think about our emotions, the more we feel our emotions, the more we're starting to retrain our brain that our emotions are safe. But many times we need to rebuild self-love and kindness with that. And start to be curious, not about the pain and the physical sensations, about your whole life. I've developed a sense of kindness and honoring the bad things that have happened in my life, honoring the things that have kept me safe all these years. Even if it led to illness, yes, it did. But I was surfing last month. So it doesn't have to be forever. The more people indulge in practices that are body-based, the more you find time in your day, even if it's a busy day or packed day, to have moments of safety, connection. The more you indulge in things that you stop enjoying, like indulging in the good things of life, even if chronic pain is there, because the more you fix on it, the more you're going to feel the smoke alarm. So breaking the cycle and still do things in life. This is just a few things, but I think that's why I love so much the work that I do, because each person is unique, and it is always fun in a way, fun in the midst of what might feel difficult to find those things. But in a group setting, and I do love group settings, it sometimes is more standardized. It is understanding our triggers, how they link with trauma, and rebuilding kindness and compassion, so we can heal the wounds that are playing up in our lives that might be leading to that dysregulation.
All right.
I feel like a long answer, because I could talk about this for so many hours. Yes. Because it links so many things at the same time. This change, I got my life back thanks to this, and many people that I work with and many million people that know about mind and body. The thing about mind and body is this is not a woo-woo thing. There is research and evidence of all of this. People are just very formatted to the standard medicine. It's a new learning.
Why mind and body is so much more effective than common medicine, or like the common way of treating these things?
So that is mind and like normal medicine, standard medicine exists and is needed. We need that, right? But when things have been created from nerve systems regulation, that is not effective. And that ends up making people living a life like me. I've been told you have fibromyalgia, you need to deal with this the rest of your life, never going to go away. So when there is symptoms that have been created from mind and body perspective, regulation, so there is so much more coming nowadays in this research. But there is, both worlds exist. We need both worlds because it's always going to be acute pain and illness.
Another quick question. You mentioned a few tools, so books or resources. Could you maybe mention 3 of the most helpful resources? This can be books, this can be podcasts that help you in this field?
Yes, so there are a few things I recommend to people. So there is this podcast which I tell people it changed my life. So it was as a podcast recorded by Dr. Howard Schubiner, which is one of the main pioneers in this field. The pioneer of this field was Dr. John Sarno, and he has many books. And his theory was a lot about rage and emotions creating back pain. A lot has grown since then, but Dr. Howard Schubiner podcast was a 2-hour podcast. When I listened to that, I was like, oh my God, this makes sense. And then after that, I read a book from John Sarno, which was The Mind and Body Prescription, which is a bit of an outdated book, but it's still so relevant. Because when I was reading that book, it's like all my symptoms from my life since I had anxiety as a baby, it makes sense. Like this man knew all my life, all my symptoms were making sense. But that podcast, and I can give you the link to put on kind of on the description, that podcast and 2 books that I now recommend to people. My top book, it is The Biology of Trauma, and that is by Amy Apigian. I think I'm saying that correct. And I think because that talks about the nerve system and talks about how that changed our biology, and it talks about the somatic part, which is to reference more the way I work nowadays. But then more mind and body, that neuroplasticity part, it is The Way Out by Dr. Alan Gordon. That was used to be my first reference. And I think this will be the book I'll tell you, go and read about knee pain. It's a very easy, simple book to read. And explains a lot how the brain and the pain is created. And when I say pain, it's symptoms, not just pain.
I will definitely keep that in mind. And the last question, let's say someone who like listened to the whole episode or just skipped to this section right now and who feels overwhelmed, what would you say is this one thing that would help them do the first step?
I would say reach out to me so I can send you a resource, that I just sent you before the podcast. But not just me, like there are so many mind and body practitioners nowadays and so many resources that people can find more information. The thing I'll say, reaching out, and this is the nerve system is going to always prioritize safety, right? Survival. And the strongest way to feel safe is co-regulation. So finding someone that understands about mind and body, speak with them. And this is so important. And this is what made me want to do this work, because when we live with chronic pain or chronic illness that is not seen very well, people can't see, you feel very lonely. You feel like you're not understood. You feel like you're broken. You feel like people don't get it. And that is so debilitating. So speaking with someone that sees you and understand and know how difficult it is to go through that, and speaking with doctors and doctors understanding and doing all these scans and exams, and no one, like you have 10 diagnoses, different diagnoses, and that is hard. And many only people that have been through that many times can understand, or people that used to work with people. So that's my first advice. Like, reach out to someone and speak with, like, it's free to talk. Like, someone can reach out to me and book it and speak with me. I can send them some resources. Find someone that understands you, because that is a way for you to feel safe already.
All right. Thank you so much for this amazing talk. I think we covered a lot, from mind and body to trauma to how to feel safe in our bodies.
I think what I would say, if whatever who's listening, if you suffer from chronic pain, gut issues, anxiety, depression, all of that, and you feel like there is no way out of this, I know how they feel it is to find hope. So that's why understanding and trust it is so important. So read any of the things that I said. See to yourself that is another possibility. Because I've been on that side. I stopped living my life for 10 years. All my life depended of how much pain I had. I'll wake up and the first thing I'll check is how much, what is hurting today. And then depending on that, I'll choose what I would do. So I stopped really engaging in life and living life meaningfully for many years. And I have a full life now. I never thought I could live in a fulfillment way with sense of love and to myself and others. So there is another way out. That is the only thing I want to say. Even if everything doesn't work, there is hope. And I hope that mind and body connection brings hope to some people that feel like they've been stuck or their body's been broken.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Abby. And you'd be surprised how many young adults I see and connect nowadays with mind and body symptoms. I think that will be another conversation, but the pressure of the world nowadays is just leading for this to happen in much earlier ages than before. Well done you to be open at this age.